Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 131. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co-founder and CEO of Laborless, an immigration tech company that automates H-1B visa compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, which is a digital marketing agency for the immigration and mobility industry, and of course, which brings you this show. Today, I'm super excited to have our guest, Saiman Shetty, who is the CEO and founder of a company called Smart Green Card. So Smart Green Card is a super interesting company. It came out of Simon's personal experience prepping for an O-1 visa, eventually applying for an EB-1A and getting it, and kind of starting to help his friends and colleagues and others in his life, figure out and get some help with their EB-1A process, and realizing that there's actually, need for this kind of service and this kind of support. And it turned into a company that provides all sorts of resources and courses and opportunities and connections and such for people applying for O-1 visas, EB-1As, EB-2 national interest waivers, et cetera. Really awesome company and a really great story. I'm really excited to have Saiman on. So before we jump into the conversation with Saiman, I just want to give a big thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, DocketWise, or now as they're known, 8am DocketWise, the parent company AffiniPay rebranded as 8am. So DocketWise, which is one of their products, is an all-in-one immigration case management system that provides best-in-class immigration forms, customizable questionnaires in a ton of different languages, industry-leading integrations, including with my company, Laborless. Great customer service. They're a really great team. I've known them for many years. One of the things I really like about DocketWise is the amount of effort they put into creating value for the industry. So they have a blog, they have ebooks, they have a podcast now, and so much more on their website. They sponsor conferences, they put things on, they support this show and other things. So they really put a lot back into the industry as well. So big thank you to them. Check them out in the show notes or visit them at www.docketwise.com and tell them that you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So thank you to them. And also thank you to Saiman so much for being here. And I'm excited to have this conversation, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Roman. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm excited to talk. As with DocketWise, and actually the CEO and one of the original founder of DocketWise was the very first episode of this show. When wow. I didn't have an intro. Like sometimes I go back on YouTube and I watch that first episode and I almost cringe because it was just so, I was just figuring it out as I went. But a lot of times my guests are companies that provide some sort of software technology for immigration practitioners, whether in the US or somewhere else around the world. But it's so cool to see all these companies over the past, let's say, 3 to 5 years coming up and kind of supporting the immigration process more broadly, right? Because immigration applications are, let's just say they're the most important part. Without filing a visa with USCIS, you can't get anything. But there's so much that happens behind the scenes that a lot of people don't think about. So I'm excited to talk to you and dive into what you've built with Smart Green Card. Before we get into that, though, I do love to discuss and dive into the person's, backstory and hear sometimes their immigration journey. I know you had one. So you are originally from India, right? By the way, where in India, were you born and where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm from a very coastal town in India called Udupi in Karnataka. Not a lot of people there's a lot of people from that town, but not a lot of people know about that town except for them having seen Udupi on the board of a restaurant somewhere or something like that. But yeah, that's where I'm from. I grew up on a farm, so pretty much being a farm boy before I came to the US, and then, yeah, that's how it happened.
And so when you were growing up, were you, I like to ask this question of guests, were you kind of a studious child? Were you kind of, I don't want to say entrepreneurial, but how some kids sort of buy and sell stuff or fix things or whatever? Did you have a tendency in either direction?
I'm not sure about the studious part, but I'm pretty sure about the curious part.
Okay.
I was a pretty curious child. I like to take things apart, like look at what's in it. I do remember being in the labs most of the time than the classrooms. Sometimes I would just like not show up in the classrooms and be in the labs most of the time because I just like to be hands-on and learn rather than just rote learning or theories and stuff like that. So that's kind of like one of the fondest memories of my childhood is like trying to make sense of things by experiencing it and like being in it.
I'm kind of the same way. Did you, were you kind of, I don't want to say pushed, but, were you encouraged by your parents to say like, you do have to study, learning books, theories, et cetera? Or did they sort of see maybe that you had this, predisposition and supported you being kind of more hands-on and things like that?
I think they came from a position of trust. They were supporting me in pretty much everything I wanted to do. But it's also because, nobody in my family, I mean, like I said, I grew up on a farm. Nobody in my family necessarily has, been at the level of education that I have eventually gone on to been, right? So there's that too, because, you have so much that you can advise on, but then not beyond that. So they trusted my intuition on those things and probably hope that I won't screw up.
That's amazing. I mean, that's so important and amazing because especially when you're little, and if you want to do something, you don't know why, it just comes naturally. It's really nice to have that support, I think, in your family, especially from your parents who you respect and look up to, and you have to follow, the rules and stuff. So that's really awesome. Did you always, I don't know, maybe if you thought about this or not, but did you kind of always want to, quote unquote, leave the country, not the country of India, but like the countryside, leave farming and whatnot and be in a more, I don't know, industrialized or modern city? Or did you just sort of flow with things as they came?
There was not too much reason to leave the place I came from, but it was, again, I think it was the curiosity. I still remember, right when I was going through college, my bachelor's degree in engineering, at one point it kind of became like a little bit of an existential question for me. It's like, is this it, or is that a world beyond this? And if there is a world beyond this, let's discover it. Let's kind of see what it is about. And I call me a delusional like 18-19-year-old or whatever, like sitting in a village in India, but I just wanted to like experience everything, even if it meant that okay, at the end of all of that I'll be back or whatever it is. I'll just let destiny take me through it. But my goal was, hey, I want to just savor the world and see what kind of cultures exist there, what kind of people exist, what kind of experiences exist for someone who has not necessarily seen that so far.
Now, I know you studied, as you mentioned, you studied engineering, electrical engineering in college in India. Did you was the goal, so many people, India obviously produces incredible amounts of engineers. Many stay, but many, of course, try to go on to either continue their education or work abroad. Was that part of your thought process at all or at the time?
So I knew that I wanted to further my education beyond my bachelor's degree, but I didn't know exactly where. So that's when I started, evaluating, okay, should I do it in India? Should I do it in like Germany, Australia, France, Canada, these countries? And then I'm like, okay, getting to the US is a little bit challenging and difficult for sure. But the sort of opportunities that will show up after that, I was like, okay, yeah, let's just max it out and see what's the best out there. And at that point, I really felt like the US was the best option to go, where I wouldn't regret not having gone somewhere above where I have gone, right? So that's where I was like, okay, yeah, it's going to be difficult, but let's just push through it. Let's see what happens and then go there. So, I mean, I applied to a bunch of universities, then down selected it to ASU in Phoenix, or Tempe rather. That's how it happened.
How was your process? I know oftentimes with the F1 visa, it should be pretty streamlined. The university takes care of it. But do you remember anything about that process, or did it feel pretty easy and natural for you? So
there are a lot of people who take assistance of these consultancies and coaching centers and stuff like that. I didn't necessarily know that those existed. So I didn't go that route. Instead, I burnt like, I don't know, 5-6 hours of my time pretty much for a few weeks straight every day. and I figured this whole thing out on my own. So in terms of the F1 visa process, it's not necessarily completely that the university does it for you. They issue what's called an I-20, like the permission to apply for a visa. Sort of, I'm just very loosely stating it. It's not necessarily that, but that's essentially what enables you to apply for the DS-160 for the US visa. And then that's what I did. Applied for that, went to the interview, and yeah, I got. By the way, weird part. I got a 221G in that interview, which is additional administrative checks required. I didn't even know what a 221G even is. I all I knew was like, okay, yeah, there's like an approval or like a refusal, right? So I got this 221G, and when I was like digging deeper into it, then it occurred that it's probably because of the expertise area, the focus area that I chose at ASU. Which is control systems, and control systems happen to be an area that is used in rockets and missiles and defense systems. So probably they wanted to look a little deeper into my background that way.
That's so interesting. Now, is that something that one of those advisors or consultants could potentially inform you about before, do you think?
I don't think anyone has control over like who gets 221G or not.
Yeah. Just, the idea is like, listen, if you go into some sort of biomechanical engineering or something, it could raise a red flag because, XYZ, the government or the consulate might think something. But that's interesting. And hey, that to kind of fast forward to how you help folks now, that's something for students to think about maybe when they're choosing their major. If it's something that could have maybe U.S. national security implications or something like that, even at a very high level, it could raise red flags.
Yeah. And I remember it took me like a month and a half to 2 months to get my visa stamped on my passport and my passport back. Till then, the passport was held by the embassy, and I didn't know. It's a black hole, right? Like you don't know what's going on. You don't know if you will even get it. So that was a pretty rough moment for me. I also contemplated many times during that phase where, hey, screw it, what the heck, right? Let me find some other place to go to. But then, patience kind of won out, and I got it. Yeah.
So what was it like for you? You come from a rural kind of town and or village, I guess, in southern India, right? It's South India, right? Where Karnataka. And you land in Tempe, Arizona. What was that like for you? Culture shock? I mean, was it fun, interesting, exciting, scary?
Oh, yeah, it was a big culture shock for sure. I would be lying if I didn't say that. I said anything other than that, and I'd be lying if I said that I was so strong to like bear it through, right? Like this was a complete culture shock for me. I had not stayed away from my parents for that long. I was in the hostel, during engineering and stuff like that, but not necessarily like, okay, yeah, now I'm gonna come back and see you like once a year or maybe once every 2 years or something like that, right? So that was an experience that was not, and I didn't have anyone in my entire family that has set foot on in the US before. So I still remember this, right? Like I landed in Phoenix, went down the escalator, and then like until the airport door really opened to let me onto the curbside, I was like, okay, yeah, great, new land, everything. So the moment the door opened and I kind of stepped into that Arizona heat, that's when it's like, oh God, okay, so things real right now, right? Like, so I'm just alone here looking around me. There's nobody that I know, nobody. It just hit me like that, and it hit me very well along with the Arizona heat as well. So
literally.
Yeah, I remember I landed in August, so that's the time when it's like crazy.
Yeah.
That's
so, and like it looks different. I mean, you land in the desert. It's just the people look different, and yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
But how was your time overall? I mean, as a foreign student, in Arizona, did you find it easy to, I don't know, make friends or meet people? Was it mostly other international students, or maybe did you feel like you kind of got into a community with locals or whatnot?
Yeah. See, Arizona State University gets a lot of international students. I think that's their key focus also. And it gets a lot of Indian and Chinese and basically Asian students as well. Right. So for me, it was obviously like I had a bunch of Indians around me, which kind of, made increase the comfort essentially. But I had to put proactive effort into actually socializing with a lot more other people as well. Right. Like people from around the world and or local people in the community there and stuff. And this is something that mostly international students don't put a lot of attention into, but they end up building a circle that looks exactly like the circle that they were from back home, and it subconsciously happens because you're drawn into that, right? So that then kind of makes you miss out on one dimension of that international student experience. And that's what I'd like to caution everyone about as well. Like I wish I could go back and put a lot more. I mean, I did put good effort into it, but maybe a lot more proactive effort into being part of the broader community and understanding than I did. Now, one thing I did that I think a lot of curious people can kind of derive from is, I was like, okay, so this is the temple of learning here, right? Like there's pretty much all the fields known to mankind that is being taught in this campus. And I have an opportunity to be on this campus. Yes, I enrolled in electrical engineering. Yes, I specialize in control systems. And I have maybe like 3 coursework or 4 coursework per semester that I need to finish. But there's all these other classes going on. There's all this other knowledge being shared, right? So how can I be a part of it? So then what I did is I just went to the entire ASU's, course list, and I just randomly started, looking at courses and which classrooms where those courses taught in. So I took courses in like advertisement, in financial management, finances, etc. Like it's just crazy. I just drowned myself to test out these courses. I didn't necessarily enroll for those courses, but I would just show up in those classes, and then watch, right, what's happening. I would do that 2 or 3 times consecutively. Sometimes it interested me. I continued on it. Sometimes certain classes, like, where they asked you to paint and stuff, I'm not necessarily more of a painter or a dancer. And it was easy for me to like stop going to those classes. I did piss a few professors off also, because there's a person that hasn't enrolled in their class that's showing up suddenly. But then more professors than not were actually accommodating. They're like, heck yeah, you want to learn? Just come sit in my class. Like, don't create trouble, but learn what you want. So I think that played a very big role in shaping my overall experience eventually as an entrepreneur. Because as an entrepreneur, you can't be like, hey, I'm just an engineer, I'll just do coding work. You have to understand marketing, you have to understand finances, you have to understand like the whole gamut of things. And this environment kind of set the fertile ground for me to eventually kind of know a little bit of everything to make sense of how to put things together.
Did you feel at that time that you already at some point in the future wanted to start a business?
I think so, because for me, it's the curious mind that I have kind of doesn't let me rest after a certain point. So anytime I see myself peaking off, a lot of people would really feel happy about it, that they're at the peak of everything. For me, I always have this paranoia that, I don't want to be stagnant. I always want to have sufficient challenges that will push me up. The probability of pushing me up is like higher. So that's what keeps me going. It simply doesn't make sense for me to like not do that. So I didn't necessarily decide on becoming an entrepreneur, but I somewhere knew that I would be part of solving big challenges, major challenges, or whatever it is, right? And the road to solving major challenges, if you do it smartly, kind of passes through entrepreneurship anyway. So
yeah, because a lot of times, I that's what I ask guests. I like to ask them kind of, when did they realize maybe that they want to start a business? And I reflect on myself too. I think when I was in college, and maybe even before that, I had ideas. I always had ideas, but I never imagined myself as a quote unquote entrepreneur. I don't know why. I think I didn't have anybody around me who was an entrepreneur. I think I wasn't confident enough in myself that I could start an entire business on my own. It felt something that is so foreign, and I respect people who do it, but that would never be me. I could dream of ideas and for fun. But it's interesting that you say that, because, I was an international student. I did study here as a local student. I graduated I started with a bachelor's of science in financial economics. But then I also got a double major in philosophy, politics, and law. And my thought was similar to yours. Like, let me take the economics and math, heavier math courses to understand the analytical side. And let me take the, philosophy and politics which had some, sociology, which talks about marketing and consumer, like to have that more kind of artistic, language related. And I think in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, one day, maybe when I'm running a team or running a business, I could use all these. So it's just interesting that you mentioned that. And I think it's a really good idea you kind of audited courses without officially audit. You just showed up. But I do believe that you're allowed to audit some amount of courses where you are officially rolled in or enrolled in a class, but you're not being graded. You're not subject to the homework, but you are part of the roster, I believe, right?
Yeah, and you're also part of paying the tuition fees, which I didn't necessarily want to for those extra, stuff that you do.
See. Yeah.
So,
okay.
For me, it was not even like, hey, am I gonna take this or not? I knew for a fact that I wanted a technical degree from that place for sure,
Right.
because that's what keeps driving me. But then I felt like that would be useless without me understanding all these other things. So I realized that eventually when I ended up working in companies where people would actually, like engineers would be so deep into their own engineering that they would always question, hey, like these HR people are useless, marketing people are useless, like what do they even do? We are the people who built the product. So we kind of, as engineers, carry a little bit of a chip on our shoulder in that way. So for me, I think I was a little more humbled by what I studied, that, hey, okay, there's all these functions in some capacity that's needed for you to like build a product that convinces people that of the product's value and sell it and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective. I'll tell you what, immigration lawyers are the same, in my view. This was my perspective when I was practicing as an attorney. You feel that, you're the most important and perhaps the only aspect of immigration, and there's nothing else. You have blinders on, you work on the visa application, you help the person apply for it. And once they're done, you say, congratulations and welcome to America. You're still in your home country. You have to figure out how to get here. If you have a family, you have to move your family. You have to determine where to live, how to get a home. Can you get a credit card? How do you get health insurance? There are entire industries, there are professionals and companies that do all of this work. And I realized only when I stepped out of being an immigration lawyer and kind of more broadly stepped into the global mobility industry, I realized that immigration law is very important, very critical part, but it's still one part of the entire process. And interestingly, we'll obviously get to this eventually, what I saw was everything that happened after the visa, and I realized that's huge. What you've done and others like you are actually even preceding the immigration attorney part. There's a whole layer of services and support for people who are just planning to apply for their visa, right? And how much help. So it's really interesting to watch the scope of this industry kind of grow. Okay, so on that note, you graduated, you took all these classes, you did graduate with a degree in electrical engineering from ASU. You got some job out of university, but then you eventually landed at Tesla, which is, a big company, is well known. Now you were working here as an F1 on your F1 OPT, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I'd like to kind of, in the context of time, correct you a little bit.
Okay.
Back then, I actually moved so after Phoenix, I went to Atlanta, worked there for about a year in my first couple jobs. And then when I said that I'm moving to this company called Tesla back in 2016, people were like, what's Tesla? Right. So the well-known part in the context of time probably doesn't hold. So, I came to this like relatively little known company called Tesla, which now it's a household name, but yeah.
Right. Okay, that's really cool. And did you know? I mean, you knew what the company was doing at the time. Was after that was they didn't just have the Roadster in 2019. They already had some of the other.
Oh, they had the Model S. Yeah, they had Model S, Model X, the early ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, still, it was still you rarely saw them. If you saw Tesla at all, you would say, "Oh, look, there's a Tesla now."
Right.
Yeah. The taxis are Teslas. So you moved to Tesla. They, obviously at the time they didn't have to sponsor you because you were on your F1 OPT and it was related to your field, but you were applying for your H-1B as most people do, right? So what's the story there? Because I know that starts to sort of transition into, you eventually applying for something else, and then which led to you building a smart green card. But talk a little bit about that process of like applying for the H-1B, didn't get it, and then you sort of had to do a last ditch effort and say, okay, I got to try something else. Otherwise my OPT is running out and I'm going to have to go home.
Right. See, the whole H-1B drama is what every immigrant faces at least once in their life if they want to continue their life in the US, right? So obviously, applied for the H-1B, didn't get it, multiple times. So the thing is, the part that kind of saddened me was that here I am with a master's degree working at Tesla, like one of the cutting edge companies, even at that time, right? Cutting edge companies in the world, developing electrical vehicles, not just electrical vehicles, but also extremely smart ways of making any vehicle at all, right? Forget about electric vehicles, and innovative ways of packaging the batteries so that you create a battery pack that like has a long range, is durable, all those things. So I'm working on this cutting edge cluster of technologies, and yet I have friends and people that I know back in India who have like a bachelor's degree, who are working maybe as a contractor for a consultant for a company in the US or something like that, and their company also happens to randomly apply for an H-1B lottery for them, and then here I am in the same lottery and I don't get it and they get it, right? Like, I'm not saying that one is holier than the other, but then if you look at the overall contributions to the tech ecosystem or the economy or anything in that matter, also a person who has consumed US education and is here in the US working for one of the top companies in the US, I felt like for whatever it is, the system wasn't necessarily completely merit based, especially when it comes to H-1B, right? So I repeatedly didn't get it, and then I started looking at, okay, there are a lot of people around me who do this like day one CPT type of a thing. I still consider it as a very band-aid solution. I didn't want to get into band-aid solutions. I'd rather go back and like do something with not having to deal with like visas, than figure out band-aids upon band-aids upon band-aids like day one CPT and stuff. So I was digging deep into understanding, okay, exactly, let me figure out if there's actually a truly merit-based path which doesn't have that much of a luck component in it, right? So that's where I discovered the O-1A path, and then started working on my profile. I was like, okay, yeah, so I'm working on cutting edge technology, I'm working on great stuff, I do have things that I do at workplace. How do I become a thought leader in the space, right? Like, how do I project whatever I know into the space enough that I get the necessary acclaim genuinely from people out in my field? So I that entire year or year and a half, I barely slept 3 hours every night, because I had to do 10,000 things to figure out the 100 that actually worked, right? And obviously, a lot of people would actually turn you down saying no, but I had to build volume to figure out the number of people and the opportunities that would actually say yes to me. So did that. Then it turns out that, okay, yeah, I was aiming for the O-1 so aggressively, but then, hey, there's this other path called the EB-1. That's actually a permanent solution, right? It's a green card. So I've already worked super hard. Why don't just aim for that? It was the same mindset that I used, right? Hey, I'm already working this hard. Why settle for any other country? Why not the US, right? So it's kind of the same mindset kind of mapped here. And then I was like, okay, let me just go straight for the EB-1A and see what works out there. And then that's how the EB-1A happened, right? Like, I mean, until the day that I got approved, I was simply in the mind that, okay, I'm just going to keep grinding at it, right? Like, and build stuff and like show the world that I can actually do things and stuff like that. So yeah. And then the EB-1A approval came through, and then there's like this whole, a lot of people think that the retrogression is in EB-1 is recent, but no, there was a retrogression in EB-1 like a bunch of years ago during Trump's first term as well. So there were the logistical aspects of that also that I had to navigate, but yeah, that's how it turned out.
Yeah, because you got it approved, your F1 OPT is expiring, and now suddenly after the approval, it retrogresses and you can't adjust.
Yeah, and on top of that, they stopped waiving interviews for everybody employment based, right? So, and then now there's the interview that you get called for, and yeah, I mean, that's multiple things that kind of showed up as a surprise, and that was a lesson for me as to like how to deal with surprises, right? Like, things always don't go as you plan it to go.
It's so funny. I mean, you think, oh, wow, you got the EB-1A approval. As soon as you get that, nope, life turns around and says, nope, you got to keep grinding. I'm going to throw a little more stress in your direction.
Yeah.
But you got through it, and congratulations, by the way, of course, that's a huge deal. So you got, you eventually were current, you adjusted, you got your EB-1A. and now you have your green card. Were you, because I know you went from Tesla, you moved on to Lyft. So were you, did you now feel freer to pursue any job? Like, how did you feel, I guess, when you got that approval sort of in your hands and you knew I'm a green card holder?
The biggest feeling was, first of all, like not being super tied to an employer, right? Like that was the biggest, not having your very existence in this country and being tied to an employer out there.
Right.
That's the biggest sigh of relief, because that meant that I could experiment more in terms of like, starting my own thing, different projects that I needed to work on, traveling for work. There's so many different avenues that it opened up. And also like visa stampings and stuff like that were also not necessarily needed at that point. So it's not just one thing I can point to and be like, oh, okay, this is a relief. And that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't even recognize the benefits of putting all the work required that it might eventually take you to an EB-1A, is because all the benefits that you get are micro benefits, but 1,000 of them, right? When you put them all together, your life is actually much better. But then when you analyze each of those benefits in isolation, you feel like, hey, I'm fine on an H-1B anyway. I'm fine. Like, what the heck, right? Like, I'll just, yeah. But I think COVID is what changed a lot of it, because I know of people who couldn't travel on COVID because the embassies were shut for restamping before they could get back, right? Mm-hmm. So that's when they lost loved ones abroad, and still they couldn't travel for their funerals and all that, because, hey, I got to choose between like keeping this job and attending the funeral. And that's a decision that they needed to make, which they regret to this day. They didn't travel for their parents' funerals or loved ones' funerals.
That was I was actually just talking to somebody yesterday about COVID, and I mean, we try not to talk about it too much, but that was a rough time for anybody and everybody around the world. But these little logistical issues, administrative issues, were life-changing for people. And yeah, to your point, I mean, having a green card is just in that moment is a world of a difference,
right?
So around, and when did you get your EB-1A? Like, when were you able to adjust? What year?
I think it was 2018 to 2019 or something.
Got it. Yeah. So, I'm by the way, just looking at your LinkedIn profile as we're talking, because again, like I said, you went from Tesla, then you worked at Lyft for a few years. And then you moved on to a company called Neuro, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. They're based in California, right? So
everybody in the Bay Area, yeah.
Yeah, they have that, because we don't have them here in New York, but they've got those little self-driving delivery cars. So you were definitely, I mean, you could have applied for an NIW as well. I mean, you're building this technology that's, in my view, of importance to national interest. I'm not a lawyer anymore, so I can't for sure say. But yeah, you were building really cool stuff. At the same time, though, because I want to talk about this a little bit before we get into Smart Green Card, you started a company called Resume Puppy, which still exists, right? Can you talk a little bit about? So it's a company that sort of helps people, especially ones applying for tech, just to create a better resume, right?
Yeah.
To make it easier for them to have a resume that's maybe more marketable or whatever. How did that company idea come about, and sort of, did you just give yourself now the freedom, given that you have your green card, to explore these ideas and start a business outside of your sort of full-time job? Did you sort of finally, you're able to blossom, right? Because you have your green card.
Yeah. So when COVID happened, a lot of people lost their jobs, and I got a lot of requests from on LinkedIn from students as well as people who kind of got laid off and all that. That, hey, I'm finding it hard to get a job. Like, what's the thing that will give me an edge over an employer, over my competition in front of an employer and stuff like that. So one of the key things, obviously, that gives you an edge is your resume. That's single largest first point of advertisement of yourself, right? Like to an employer. And people are like, hey, can you help me optimize my resumes and stuff like that? I did, try to help a few people, but then it started consuming a lot of my time, but I still felt like there's value I could add if I could make something scalable. So I partnered with one of my friends, Anish Hegde, who's been my buddy since college. And we started Resume Puppy. And Resume Puppy was a way to bring our collective ideas together in terms of what goes into making a resume and codify it into like a platform in terms of like it taking care of the format. You don't have to think about that. There are smart AI tools that will help you figure the content out in a way that you present it well. And nobody was doing this at that time. Now there are a lot of people doing similar tools, but this was probably like 5-6 years ago, right about COVID time, where nobody was necessarily doing it, and we got like 1,000+ adoptions within a week of launching that. So that was my first kind of thing into, this is how building a SaaS product looks like, and the high of like all these people coming in and starting to use the product. That was amazing. And then the question arises, like, okay, how can I keep them in my product? How can I make my product more useful? What kind of metrics should I look at? So it was more of like a university open up for me doing that. Because even now it's running, and I don't put too much of my time and attention into that. It's just on autopilot for now. But the amount of things that it taught me in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of how to bring all these different elements together, was just crazy.
Were you charging right off the bat for this, or was it like a free service?
No, it was free for a while, and then obviously our AWS costs started stacking up because there were like 5,000 people using it and like creating 50 resumes each of them and stuff. So obviously we need to keep the lights on in that way. So we decided to like put a fee. There's still a free version where you can get it with watermark and stuff like that, but there's just like a $5 or $7 fee per month type thing. Yeah, that's
amazing. I mean, it's like and you still generate revenue from this?
It's enough to keep the lights on that product.
That's amazing.
I never intended for this to necessarily be like a blockbuster money-making product, essentially, because the type of audience that it was even working with was of that type. But it did teach me a lot.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you are basically breaking even to learn. Usually you have to spend money to learn, right? And I think by learning by doing and then having it at least run itself is an amazing opportunity. And that's why I like to ask also, like, did you have entrepreneurial experiences when you were little? Because sometimes I've talked to guests who started businesses and scaled businesses, like teenage businesses, but still they had the experience of like, I washed the car and then I found 3 friends to triple the car washing. And then I had to make flyers, and what they're doing was recruiting, they're doing marketing, they're building systems as teenagers, but you still learn so much that you take with you into the future. So I love that. And obviously you were able to do this without having to worry, is this going to invalidate my H-1B, or is this going to somehow impact my immigration status now that you have your green card? And that's why I wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit. So
quick comment on that one, Roman. See, a lot of people tell me this, hey, I want to start a business, but then I am going to do that like after I get my green card type of thing. And then you don't know when that would come by, right? It's probably 20 years or whatever. I would like to say that, see, there's a lot of things that you can actually do to test out your idea, run thought experiments to test out, if things really would work or not, etc. Without necessarily having a green card. So don't use a green card as an excuse for you to start an entrepreneurial journey that you wanted to start. Or see, the entrepreneurial journey doesn't start from the incorporation of a company. It starts in your mind, your ability to solve problems, and it takes 1,000 iterations to figure out that one thing that works. So a lot of people just using the fact that, hey, I don't have a green card, so I'm not going to even think about entrepreneurship. I think that's a escape more than more than a factual thing.
Yeah, and obviously, if you are worried about whether a particular action is going to invalidate or implicate your stay, talk to a lawyer, ask them, and say, here's what I want to do, here's what I've been doing, here's the visa I'm on. What do you think? And an attorney will tell you, you can or cannot or should not do this. But I definitely agree with you. I mean, when I was starting, again, different perspective because I'm a U.S. citizen, but even just from the perspective of having a full-time job and wanting to work on something on the side, it took me a long time to decide finally to quit my job. And arguably, I still quit too early. I probably should have stayed for another year, made some extra money, saved a little bit more money while doing more stuff. I think I used the company as an excuse to leave my job because I wasn't super happy there, but that different perspective. But I agree with you. There's so much that you can do. Talk to people, test the market, ask questions, explain what your product is to people, and would you use it? How would you, et cetera. That's all part of the process without you having to, get a bank account, create an LLC, and officially. Actually, it's funny because now all these, like, I'm sure you've seen this on YouTube and across social media, all these like LLC gurus, they're like, you got to start LLC, it's just silly. And so maybe that's what scares people off, right? They feel like the first step has to be an official step. And if I take an official step, that's scary to me. And to your point, it doesn't have to be an official step. It could be just, thoughts, ideas, conversations.
Right. Yeah. Because what's going to happen is this: you're going to wait for your green card to even start thought experimenting on if your idea makes sense or not. And then you're going to take like 3-4 years after that to like even, understand what actually works to a point where you can actually incorporate a company and make money from it. And then your green card is probably like 20 years away. So how old will you be when you actually realize your idea?
Yeah, that's very true. That's so true. And you know what? If you find an idea that you think is going to be huge, then you start to potentially re-strategize your immigration path if you feel that it's viable, right? There are, for example, venture firms that can help you with a green card or visa application as part of you starting this venture, or heck, maybe you want to move to Canada or back to India and start it from there. I mean, there's so many more options. Anyway, That's a different podcast, but that's a really good, that's a really good point, and something I love that. So thank you for bringing that up, So to get back to you though, you're at this really cool juncture. You got your green card, you're working at Neuro, right? You have this great job. You've also now started Resume Puppy. So you've got this sort of, entrepreneurial experience going on, and you're learning as you're going, etc. What was the sort of catalyst that brought you to starting what would eventually be Smart Green Card? Because you'd been, you were helping people with resumes. You seem to be a person that your friends, colleagues, former classmates would go to for advice about some of this stuff. What were those first few things where you realized like, maybe there's something here as well for this green card process too?
Yeah. See, again, back to COVID, a lot of people lost jobs, and like that was when their visa status were also in question, right? Like, hey, I got to find something in 60 days or else I don't know what I'll be doing, etc. So that's when people started, that's when I actually started putting stories about myself on LinkedIn just to, bring this calm to people, right? It's like, I think I was one of the first persons who started talking about the possibility of an O-1A, the possibility of an EB-1A on LinkedIn, quoting my own experiences. Hey, look, I did this. I was working at like a job, doing great, meaningful stuff there. And this is how I, genuinely moved from that point to being a thought leader in the industry and stuff. So I started adding like nugget sized posts about like how you can do this and that, and why it's useful and stuff. I started getting a lot of queries, right? And and not just from people generally out there in LinkedIn, but people who I knew as well. Everybody who was facing this problem, including colleagues. So I started helping a couple people, because see, the thing is, most people, what they do is like they go to an immigration attorney, which they should. And the attorney would then say that, hey, you don't qualify for an EB-1A at this point in time, so I'm not going to take you up, right? And then that's kind of like the dead end for them. And then like, what do I even do? So increasingly, there were people who were trying to get an understanding of, okay, I'm working in self-driving. I'm working in the software industry. I'm working as a product manager. What are the things from a product manager's standpoint I can do in order to be a genuine thought leader in the field? Now, that is not immigration advice. That is pure career positioning advice, right? Like that's how, and that eventually, ends up being useful for the immigration path as well, eventually. So that is the piece of grassroots level, coaching that law firms are not structured to necessarily give people, because it's a law firm. Like, you're not working in tech to understand the nuances of how a tech workplace works, what kind of projects you have going on, what kind of proposals can you make in terms of like increasing your impact at your workplace and stuff. That's one. But the second thing is, the business model doesn't work that way, right? Like your business model is built on building cases and getting out the door, filing, getting them approved. Great. I mean, that's great. So that's when people started realizing this need for a coach or coaching type of a ecosystem that can actually help you to get up to a point professionally where you can then work with an attorney to like write the case and file the case and stuff, because you then have a case, right? That is along the lines of what they look for in order to pursue the EB-1A. So I started helping a few people out in my workplace about, hey, look, maybe you should focus on this project a little more, because there are these 5 key points here that you can show your impact over there, and then you generalize that impact and publish a paper on it. So you're not disclosing the confidentiality of the company, but then at least you're talking as a thought leader in your field, right? So you can discuss industry trends in the space, etc. So one thing led to the other, and a couple of them were able to get the profiles, evolved, because they were as committed as I was, like working super hard at it, and then went to an attorney and got that filed, and it got approved, right? So that's when I realized that, oh my God, okay, so the impact that I'm able to have just through advising people this way in how to reposition their careers has a long-lasting impact on them and their families too. But then the question in me is, okay, I can help 5 people like this every month. What about the other like thousands that are kind of writing into me, right? So then I'm like, okay, how do I create something that will help people at scale a little more? That's when I started like Smart Green Card as an online course. I still remember it was like I just locked myself in my room for a long time, right? Like 3-4 weeks, recorded this course, a very rookie, like Zoom recording type of a thing, but it had the good material in it. And then I launched the course. The course started picking up traction. And gradually people were like, hey, looks like your course is really valuable, but is there a way that you can add more value than that, right? So after a couple of years, they were asking me that question, because they did work on quite a bit of things through the course, but they didn't necessarily crack that code of, okay, am I good enough already? And then there were also immigration attorneys that started writing to us saying, hey, if you can build something like this where you can help people reposition their careers, we'd love to work with you as the filing side of it, right? Like you can send us people when they are done building, and we can work on the filing part. So that's when I started seeing all these pieces of puzzles click together, and I saw that there is a need in the industry for something that kind of precedes a formal legal service that people offer, just to get people's profiles to a point where it is actually doable. Now, there's multiple ways to do it. Obviously, you got to be ethical and right in how you do it, because people can do all sorts of things, right? So that's where it's very important to pick who you work with as well, right? Like this should be a person of high integrity, not willing to flout the rules and stuff like that, and then associate with them and work with them. And then we built what we call the VIP plan in Smart Green Card, where we have now connections with so many different journals, so many different journalists to get people published. Basically, all the several of the verticals that are in the EB-1A process or the O-1A process, how do we get them to be a thought leader in the field, at the same time potentially fulfilling those things that gets them ready to get into an attorney's doors, and then the attorneys can file. So that's how it evolved. It's just the market telling us what to do, and then us just listening to them and evolving it to that point.
So do you do this full time now? This is your full-time job?
Yeah, this is what we do. I mean, we are also building a lot of technology internally. We want to bring the right blend of technology and humans, because at the end of the day, it's the client success that matters. So whether we do it through technology or humans, it's important to strike like a right blend. So yeah, I'm very deep in tech development at Smart Green Card. Very deep in optimizing operations, catering to people. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the technology that is within Smart Green Card, whether it's course technology or something else?
Yeah, it's not the course technology. It's like now we need to evaluate profiles to even understand if this is a profile that can be evolved or not, right? So that's one part of it. But that's also things like, how do you track your entire progress really well? So what happens is sometimes people get very excited through our coaching, and then they're like, hey, yeah, this is a newfound skill that I found. Like, hey, I'm able to write papers right now. So all they do is like keep writing papers and don't start thinking about like the other things, right? And in their minds, they're like, hey, I'm killing it right now. But you keep writing papers all day long, like, who'll think about the other things that you need to do? So you'll still not be a good profile at the end of the day, right? So we are developing, we already have this technology implemented for clients that are in Smart Green Card, of giving them a very holistic view of their profile process, so that they don't put too much emphasis on one and reduce emphasis on the other and stuff like that. So that's one. We do use a lot of this opportunity data and stuff like that we gather through helping a lot of clients. So we know what the profile of someone who came in was, and after a bunch of months they got, they engaged with an attorney and got approved as well. So we have that correlation, which helps us decide better who should we even take in, whose probability is higher in terms of like getting out the door successfully. So that helps us be very selective in doing it.
So you're not taking just anybody who wants to sign up for Smart Green Card. You actually have not, and I'm talking about the customers. You have a vetting process for them as well.
Oh yeah, we actually reject over 60% of the people who apply to us.
Wow.
Yeah, we say no, and then they go elsewhere and get it done or whatever. But like we say no, or we kind of tell them, we give them very specific pointers, or we refer them to our much cheaper course, saying, hey, build your profile up a little more to get ready to this point where you qualify, right? Because we don't want to end up in a situation where we take everyone and anyone, and then like we are unable to keep up our success rates at the end of the day.
Right. And of course, you don't want them to fail and have a rejection on their record. You would rather them maybe apply in a year, or come back to you in a year when they're ready to really build up their profile and then have a greater chance of success versus, getting an EB-1A rejection. And then you have to maybe explain that in the future when you file again, et cetera.
Exactly. And it affects everything, right? Like it affects also in the willingness of attorneys to be part of our ecosystem as well. Sure. Because, now our attorney partners, like the law firms that we kind of team up with, they put a high level of trust in the quality of clients that we can prep and drive to them. So if we take in everybody and anybody, it's going to be difficult for us to maintain that quality on that end. So then we don't consistently earn that trust. And then it's like, do we really need to work on it? We don't ever want to be in that situation.
So that brings up a good question. You kind of alluded to it, but I'm very involved in the immigration attorney law space. Mm-hmm. I'm an attorney. I mean, I don't practice anymore, but I'm an immigration attorney myself. So where you kind of talked about how immigration attorneys and law firms fit into your ecosystem. So typically the way it works is you have some number of attorneys that you work with as part of your, I don't want to call it a marketplace, but maybe your trusted partners, mm-hmm. right? And so as you get these folks who go through your program and, according to you, they're sort of more ready to at least approach an attorney, you have that vetted group of attorneys that you send them to. Is that mm-hmm. is that right?
Right. That's right. Yeah.
And so do you, is that network ever going to grow? Obviously you want these attorneys not to feel like they're competing over each other, probably, with your business, but maybe other attorneys are listening to this and saying, wow, this is genius, Smart Green Card. I do O1s or EB-1As, because you guys do O1, EB-1A, and NIW, right? And these are very popular visas, obviously. Do you, and maybe there's some attorneys saying, I'd love to be one of your attorney partners. Is there ever an opportunity where you expand that service, or there's other ways of working with attorneys potentially?
Yeah, for sure. We have an email specifically for that, partnerships@smartgreencard.com. Everybody is welcome to, apply to be part of the network, and we accept all applications. What we do though is we do a thorough kind of like a vetting. No, all law firms are great. They are great right. at some or the other thing, right? When you even dive into the nitty-gritties of the EB-1A, there are some law firms who are great at EB-1A for artists, some great at EB-1A for tech people, right? So based on the type of clientele we have, what is best for them, we try to choose the partners that we work with in that way. And also, what's the turnaround time that they give, what level of... See, the thing is, we help people evolve their profiles and tell a certain story and build it up to a point, right? We want to make it as seamless as possible for the law firms to then take that story from us and the clients and then use the entirety of that story in whatever possible best manner they can in writing their case and stuff like that, because this is all real hard work we've put over a year's worth of time, stretch of time. And how easy is it to transfer that to like a legal partner who's working on that case? All of these are what we kind of factor in. At the end of the day, we put our clients at the middle of everything, right? So what makes our client experience seamless is what we are interested to do with anybody.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, and that makes sense. I think the fact that you openly vet everybody and are very specific about who you refer people to builds your trust and credibility. Do you not only work with tech clients, or could somebody who just graduated from university with a PhD in art history, sculpting, and they have had some sculptures featured in a museum and it was written about in Interior Magazine, whatever, is that somebody who could benefit from your course, or is it mostly people who come from a sort of, let's say, similar background to you, technology, software, et cetera?
See, our program is built to be field agnostic. So you bring the expertise of your field, whatever you do, right? And then we bring the expertise of helping you become a thought leader in that space and get the necessary acclaim legitimately. So that's how we kind of complement each other. So even today, if someone is coming into Smart Green Card, we rely heavily on their field of expertise in terms of like, okay, what are the concepts that you're bringing? What is your impact, etc. And then we help amplify it through our networks and the things that we do. So point is, our program is able to cater to pretty much everybody from any field. However, it so happens that the biggest pain is faced by mostly Indians, sometimes maybe even Chinese, because of the long backlog in the queue and stuff like that, right? So most Indians, guess what they happen to be? They happen to be IT people or like tech people, right? So that is how majority of our program now has tech people in it that we are catering to. And when we do it, great. But then we do have some very interesting, we do have some physicians, we do have some, we have one mixologist in our program. Wow. He's pretty good in he's been invited by a lot of bars around the world and stuff like that. We had like a couple of photographers as well. So they are there. But then it's just the sample set that kind of gets mapped into a program. It's mostly been,
Yeah, the mixologist, if anything, they can get a national interest waiver because everyone needs a drink right now.
That's the lawyer in you talking, right? Like
exactly. Hey, you got to build a story somehow. Okay, that's really cool because I happen to know, I actually had somebody reach out to me the other day for referral. I don't practice anymore, but I know a ton of attorneys who is a print media model. Asking for somebody who handles O-1s and I guess EB-1s as well, specifically with experience working with models. And I know that, to your point, all immigration attorneys are, let's say 99.99% are great, honest, hardworking, want to do the right thing. Many of them, though, as you said, just by happenstance, happen to maybe be experts in one field or another. Even better if they have their own experience. For example, I know an attorney who does O-1s, EB-1s, and is himself an influencer, like millions of followers, etc. So he's just like their firm is just, I would argue, a little bit better equipped to work with famous people and influencers because you talk to an influencer, especially if, let's say, they're young, right? You have 10 million followers, you're 22 years old, like, your life is exciting because you're, whatever. And now you suddenly have to talk to a lawyer and you may not know how, but if you are talking to a lawyer who is an influencer themselves and they understand your language, they could potentially just sort of help you marginally better, a tiny bit better, or at least make you feel more comfortable where if you're a client, and that matters too. So I love that concept of specializing in vetting people and also connecting them with the right people. Now, I'm prodding you. This is a question. I mean, obviously, I didn't prepare you. Like, we don't have prepared questions, but you mentioned with the VIP program, you also have connections to, maybe some journalists or journals or whatever. I'm assuming that tends to be in the more like hard science technology space. So for example, if a photographer, you said, came
Mhm.
to you, could you eventually, or maybe you already have, through the VIP program, some connections there as well to help them be recognized in a legitimate and official manner?
So we do have those connections, and not just do we have those connections. Whenever a client comes in the door, we know what field they are in. So our team, we have a very specialized PR team and a very specialized like publishing team as well. Our team gets to work on understanding exactly like who will need to get this person published like later down the line. And it's a fine line, because you need to make sure that it's not a pay to play type of a thing, right? Like, so
Right.
it is legitimate publication, and it is a person out there, like a journalist out there. Although we are liaisoning the process, we are taking the story to the journalist and be like, hey, look, this is a great, I don't know, mixologist or whatever, right? Like that you should look into. We should still refrain ourselves from having influence over the review process and the editorial process that they have, right? So that's the fine line, and that's the reason we don't guarantee any specific outlet. We say that yes, our experience says that we can get you in these many number of outlets throughout the journey, because we will make those phone calls and we will pitch you to so many people, but we can't guarantee any one outlet, because these journalists need to be able to make their independent decision after review process. And part of that review process is what establishes that you have passed through rigorous scrutiny in your own field, which kind of, has put you in the top of the field, which is what eventually attorneys want to have on the record so that they can argue it with that, right? So there's all of these things that we pay a lot of attention into, so that sometimes people or clients rather, who don't understand the nuances of these, right? Like they kind of end up thinking that we just hit a button and it gets published somehow. And this is where, educating them on what's right, what's wrong, what's the specific nuance of a thing. That's what kind of makes our job challenging and hard as well. But at the end of the day, it is also fruitful when the client actually understands that, hey, I am getting featured here because I have legitimately earned that feature.
Yeah, definitely. And, there are a lot of attorneys who frankly speak out about the pay to play, and not that any immigration attorney wishes a denial on any immigrant, but I think, if the government starts to see too many EB-1s, EB-2NIWs, even O-1s applying with these pay to play, kind of situations, and they start issuing RFEs, they start issuing denials, they see it's a trend, it'll hurt the people who are applying legitimately, because the scrutiny will increase. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, they may make changes, right, to the program to make it a lot harder, and that won't help anybody, including the really hardworking, individuals who deserve this, but also arguably the country that's not going to benefit from them being able to stay here and, grow in their field.
Right, exactly. And that's part of our pre-vetting process also. When we take clients in, is like we ask them questions that kind of help us understand if they are in the mindset of doing everything ethically, or they want to cut corners and like, do shortcuts and like end up asking us to go do shortcuts for them, right? So we kind of have that as part of our initial vetting as well, to make sure that there's like, we are working with the right people. That's very important.
So what are you looking forward to for Smart Green Card? You're building more technology. You're obviously helping, you're growing, I guess, your candidate pool, your client pool outside of just technology. What are some things that you see in the future for the business?
Yeah, so that's obviously the part where we are, building stuff to help our clients evolve their profiles legitimately and efficiently. We are also evolving to a point where we think we can be a massive value to law firms, right? So because we work for 8 to 10 months with the clients, and we are able to understand their story inside out. So there's a lot of work that the attorneys later on need to do in understanding the story from scratch and evaluating the evidence from scratch and stuff, that we can prep quite a bit of that, to help law firms out. So that's the part that we are also working on intensely. How do we bring more value to law firms that we work with in our network? And they've been honestly asking for this from our end as well. It's like, hey, I don't want to end up like spending time from scratch when you guys have already you guys already know this. So how do we kind of tie that together is what we are working on. We are building technology on that end as well. But that's always a fine balance, right? Because now you're going from a very technical profile understood by technical people, which is us, to shaping it in a way that a non-technical attorney can, within a few hours of their work, understand everything, and then a few more hours of their work kind of be able to like wrap a case up and file it and stuff like that. So we are working with all the law firm partners that we have right now in getting through the details of what actually is useful for you. So that's why we are evolving into like being a legal tech type of a solution, I would think.
That's awesome. So the idea would be that a law firm would be interfacing with your, what you're building as well.
Yeah, we already have people working with us. Like law firms are working with us in that. Yeah.
In the tool. That's awesome. Yeah. So that's exciting. I mean, I'm really excited to, follow your growth there. And, I hope you share more. Maybe eventually I'll see you at one of the attorney conferences. I think there'd be a lot of interest and demand for this, because this, what you provide, especially if, with the vetting and with the kind of trust that you hopefully are building, not just with your clients, but with attorneys, they would feel comfortable saying, hey, you are a sort of complimentary service to our law firm. I was at the American Immigration Lawyers Association. It's the big, the immigration bar. There's an annual conference every year with lots of vendors. I'm a vendor every year. There are a lot of companies. It used to be that it was mostly kind of case management companies that go there to sell their software to, or something like me, compliance software, whatever, to attorneys. This, over the past couple of years, and this year I think more than prior years, a lot of the booths were sort of these, add-ons, if you will, to the law firm. So you had people that provide, obviously, like translation and those kind of services. That's always been there. Now you have people that are providing like part-time or on-demand paralegal services. You have part-time on-demand receptionists and things like that. That you have all these interesting services. I suspect in case prep, right? Like, I suspect that you would do well there. Just putting that little seed of thought into your mind, because I think a lot of attorneys might say, I get a ton of inquiries and I want to help as many of them as possible. I don't know what to do when clearly aren't eligible today. I don't know where to send them. I don't have the resources to help them, and I can't track their progress. But I would love, they came to me as an attorney. If I got them today, that's a case for me. That's my income, and that's, but if I send them out and say, look, come back to me in a year, you don't know what's going to happen. They're going to find another attorney. Like, who knows? I would rather keep them in my ecosystem, maybe refer them to someone. In this case, it could be you. Have that program or whatever help them build their profile up, and then come back to me as their initial lawyer that they reached out to with a built-up profile. So just saying, I think you guys are going in the right direction.
No, we are already building. I mean, it's a function of trust, right? So the law firm obviously wouldn't be able to refer them to us, and they shouldn't if we are not trustable. So it's a product of these law firms that we work with for, 2-3 years now. And that's showing up now, where they actually send us people that sign up with us, and then like we send them back after their profiles are mature and stuff like that. So that's already happening. For us, it's about like, okay, it's happening for X many people. How do we make it available for a lot more, right? So that involves that's the problem solving at the end of the day.
How do we make it X to the power of Y, where Y is greater than 1?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. There's my math skills coming back. Awesome. Well, this has been wonderful. I want to ask one final question of you, and I've been really enjoying asking this of people. Most of the time we ask folks, what advice would you have for yourself, or for a younger person or somebody starting out? I like to kind of flip that and ask you, what advice are you listening to right now? Like, what advice is relevant to you today, where you are with your business and where you're moving forward? What advice are you listening to?
There's a lot of noise in the space, but the one thing that we are hell-bent on, like keeping as our North Star, is to keep the customer at the center of everything. I think that's what gives us a test of truth almost all the time, is to make sure that, okay, what is best for the customer is best for us, is best for the business, best for everybody, right? So because at the end of the day, there's so many different ways you can do it, but our goal is to make sure that the client not only gets success at the end of the journey, but they can be proud of that success and they can keep that success for the long haul. And that only happens when you do things genuinely and legitimately. If you cut corners and like do whatever, you might be able to get them to the success point, but then you don't want them to be stuck in a situation where they're always watching over their shoulders and, hey, I don't know what will happen type of a thing. That kind of defeats the peace of mind purpose that you are kind of wanting to take them through anyway. So the biggest principle that we want to kind of keep is to make sure that we stay aligned with what is best for them. And for us, it's not about building an EB-1A profile. Although that's what a lot of people come through us for us, it is like you have worked super hard for 5 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years of your life so far. You've built a career in this country. Let's make you a broader thought leader in that space. And you don't have the time, you have family commitments, you have many other things going on. Let's help you use all those skill sets to become a thought leader in the space, to get that limelight, so that forget about the EB-1A. You're still better off as a professional. I mean, who doesn't want that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of goal that we approach this with. And I think that's why a lot of attorneys love us also, because we don't go after just cooking up an EB-1A profile, right? So that's the last thing we want to do. We want to make sure that the clients are legitimately shining in their fields.
Yeah. And as you said, worst case scenario, you simply show up or end up rather as a more skilled, more known, more successful professional. Even if everything else fails and you don't get any of your visas, you've still bettered yourself. Right. And I think that process is worth it. Mm-hmm. Well, Saiman, this was awesome. I really appreciate this. I really enjoyed this conversation. Congrats on all your success so far. And, I look forward to continuing to watch the company grow. And please do keep in touch as your attorney offering grows, because I would love to see you around more of the kind of immigration attorney spaces, conferences and all. So looking forward to that.
Same here. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been lovely chatting with you. I've been a fan of your shows as well. A lot of, very, very impactful people that you've had as your guests. And I look forward to, keeping you updated on everything that we do. I love the product that you're building as well. And, every single thing that will evolve to. I think that's a very important piece, in the whole labor certification market, whether it's for green cards or whether it's for H-1Bs and stuff. Keep me posted on that. That probably is a way where we can work together as well. But really looking forward to being back on the show with more.
I hope so. By the way, where can people find you? I know on LinkedIn, and I've linked to you there, but you also have a YouTube channel, right?
We have YouTube. We have YouTube. We have LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram. You can follow Smart Green Card on Instagram as well. You can email me, simon@smartgreencard.com.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Saiman. Really appreciate it. And talk to you soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Amazing. What a great episode. Huge thank you to Saiman. Exciting. Just because the field of EB-2 NIW, EB-1, and O-1 continues to grow, and more and more people are applying for it. More and more people are getting them approved. It does feel like the government is partial to these kind of visa applications. So it's really cool to see Smart Green Card, as a trusted company supporting folks with their profile building, and then eventually, hopefully, adding or leading to them applying and getting those green cards. So please check them out. I want to say thank you one more time to DocketWise, the main sponsor of the show. Now 8 a.m. DocketWise. So for folks in the immigration space, at a firm or frankly in-house as well. If you don't know DocketWise, they are an all-in-one immigration case management platform with best-in-class immigration forms, really customizable questionnaires in many different languages, industry-leading integrations, great customer service, also tons of free value. Again, if you're a law firm or work at an immigration law firm and you're not even interested in switching necessarily to DocketWise, check out their website. There are great blogs that can give you tips about marketing and business development and mentorship and things like that. They do a great job. They have ebooks, they have a podcast that I've been on as well. And they're just a great team. So check them out. The website is www.docketwise.com, or click the link in the show notes, which is a custom link so that they know that you came to them through the GMI Rocket show. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions for Saiman, please do reach out to him. And in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. Be safe and peace out, everybody.